The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's time for the ODU Wrestling Monarch Matcast, a show dedicated to all things related to the Old Dominion Wrestling program. On the web at monarchmatcast.com. Now, here's your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, and 2004 ODU alumnus, Jason Bryant.
Here at the Virginia Duels for the ODU Wrestling Monarch Matcast, one of our things we notice at the Virginia Duels every year is the number of Old Dominion alumni coaching at the high school level as high school wrestling coaches. We see schools like Old Dominion, and you put a lot of teachers and coaches out there, and it's the second and third generation. One of those coaches we're talking with right now, Jesse Pearce, head wrestling coach at Grassfield High School in Chesapeake. Lake Taylor High School alum, Old Dominion graduate, and Jesse, you're out there coaching, and when you coach in the Southeastern District, you see a lot of familiar faces week in, week out.
Yeah, I sure do. Pretty much all the coaches that are in our area we have ties with Old Dominion, so everybody went to Old Dominion, and you didn't have to bring up that Lake Taylor part. People don't know that very much, but no. Yeah, it's great. You know, we got several teams in our area very close that are all Old Dominion alums, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, you got one on your staff, too, Chris Buckner, who's also he's a Deep Creek grad that's been sitting there with you, splitting time between the fire department. It's these bonds that we make with our teammates and friends there that carry on. And, what's it like to sit there, coach against your former teammates and coach with your former teammates?
Well, first of all, Coach Buckner, he's been amazing for our program. The time that he spends with our kids and just trying to make our program the best that it can be, it's just amazing. You can't ask for a better assistant. And him and I were teammates for several years at Old Dominion. I'm a little bit older than him, and he did come from Deep Creek. And it's a funny story because when I first saw him in high school, I was like, I don't like that guy. But a lot of people were that same way about me. And, of course, when we got to be teammates, we hit it off. It was like I'm his big brother. We had this brother relationship, and it's just been like that ever since. So coaching with him has been a blessing over these last 10 or 11 years. But, when you see Hickory and they got Ben Summerlin, great Small at Great Bridge, and those were real close teammates of mine. And Motley came in later. I was a senior and he was a freshman. It's cool to see that. And, of course, we're like still old teammates, when we are around each other. But, of course, when we're across the mat, it's different, because I want to beat them every chance I get. So it's pretty neat.
And the dynamic, of course, a lot of them in the Southeastern District. You've got some assistants that are in the beach. And, of course, Eric Decker, who is part of the Martin era, coaching at my alma mater, Pocosin. And you spent time coaching there as well as your uncle, Dennis, was a head coach for a while. And just go back in time. You worked this event when you were a kid. PWA, you come through that program. What's it like to coach in this thing each and every year? I mean, watching you guys that last round, you get fired. It seems like you get more fired up at the Virginia Duels than you do a normal duel meet.
Yeah, the Virginia Duels, the atmosphere is amazing. I mean, this is the best environment to wrestle in. For us as a high school team to be able to compete right next to the top Division I programs and other colleges, and then, of course, top high schools from across the country, it's amazing. And it brings out this energy. The whole weekend leading up to, or the week leading up to it, and then the weekend, it's just, you can feel it building and building. And when you get here, the atmosphere, as soon as you walk in the door, hear your voice, or we used to, burgers, it gets everything going. And it's just, I've done it from wrestling and the high school level, college level, and as a coach. And, of course, coaching is much harder than wrestling, in my opinion, because you wrestle every match your kids does. It's just an amazing event, and we always want to be a part of it. We don't care what division we're in, whether we're in the black and blue, American, or national. We want to wrestle in this event. And, of course, we want to go as deep as we can. Last couple of years we've had some good runs as for our program, and, it wouldn't be a wrestling season without the Virginia Duels.
When it comes to setting up careers, people choose colleges for various reasons. You were local. Old Dominion was kind of a logical choice in some respects, but when you look back in the decisions you make, it's like, okay, going to ODU and wrestling at ODU really kind of just that set the coaching course of life in motion.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, Coach Simons was an amazing coach, unbelievable technician. And I love to think back about how he would be in the room with us and teaching us technique. And I use that same exact way when I'm teaching my kids technique. I mean, he would sit back and he would think. You could see him. He was kind of walking over to you, and you knew he was coming to show you something that you should be doing. And you kind of look out of the corner of your eye while you're drilling, and he would just be thinking in his mind. And he's just going through all the moves. It's like he's got a Rolodex of moves, and he's just like, okay, that's the one I want to show him. And he comes over and shows you, and you're like, it's amazing. So, just seeing how he was that way, and, of course, other coaches. Of course, Jamie Kelly was a huge influence. He was an awesome coach. I wish I would have had him my entire career in college, but I had him my senior year. Just the way those people coached, I mean, it's what you wanted to do, It was the way they gave back to me. That's what I wanted to do for my high school kids. So,
which one of your former teammates do you like beating the best out here as a high school coach?
Hey,
I'm going to ask everybody that question, so it's not just you that's going to be on the hook.
Well, I think equally all of them. I mean, honestly, and I don't always do it, but you're talking about some hell of a coaches that we're talking about here. But as far as from when I was a high schooler all the way through, Great Bridge, you always want to beat Great Bridge. And I haven't always done it. My teams, haven't always done it, either Hickory. But I want to beat them all every single time, just like they want to beat us. So that's a tough question because I feel the same about all of them, to be honest with you.
Now, like I said, we brought up your Uncle Dennis earlier. How much did having a wrestling coach in the family kind of influence your decision to want to coach?
Well, he was a huge influence in my life from when I was very young. He was one of my first coaches when I was at Tab Youth Wrestling way back. And, he dedicated a lot of his time taking kids around the country, going up to Pennsylvania, getting them as much time up there, wrestling those hammers up there.
What was that, like Youth America? It was like Youth America. There's PWA. Was there like there was a Young Guns at one point, wasn't it, too, down around that time?
Right. He started Youth America, had some really good kids on his team, First Corns, Bond. It was about him taking kids and trying to get them different looks than what was in our backyard in Virginia. Because you got to travel. When you get to a certain level in wrestling, you're winning tournaments around town, you got to move on to bigger things. And then when you start winning tournaments around your area, outside of your area, then you need to travel out of state. And, of course, where better to go than up north? And that's what he would do. And it was just, seeing that, he set the tone for that. So you got to go travel if you want to get good competition once you start getting to a certain point. So,
Donna, back into what you're doing now. Are you full-time employed at Grassfield, or you just coach there on the side? What's your day-to-day job?
No, I'm a teacher, PE 10, teach driver's ed and PE. I've been teaching for 10 years now. When I first started, I was the in-school suspension coordinator.
Like a lot of wrestling coaches start out as.
Like a lot of wrestling coaches start out as, yep. Some like to stay there a little longer. I wanted to get a real job. So, but it gives you that opportunity, gives you that foot in the door. You'll take whatever chance you get when you want to be a coach. Hey, I'll be security, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then you get in line for a better position. So I've been there since the building opened and been teaching for 10 years, 11 years now. I've lost track. I just know I got to hit 30. That's the mark that I need to hit. So,
well, looking at the way it is, I see a lot of coaches. The reason I asked that, there's a lot of coaches that aren't in schools now. How important is it for you as a coach to be in the school for, we have a forfeit epidemic in wrestling. You're there, you're able to walk the hallways. You actually pull kids out of the gym class early, like ninth grader. Okay, you might be somebody we can use 2 years from now to get them to fall in love with the sport. What are the benefits of being in the school for you as a wrestling coach?
Well, first of all, you have to be, because you got to be able to keep a pulse on what's going on with your team, your athletes, all that. So just being in the building, you're able to check on their grades, check on their behavior, make sure you're just monitoring things, supervising with your athletes. They know you're in the building, they can come talk to you. It's not just, hey, let's talk at practice kind of thing. It's crucial to be in the building. Because if you're not, then you don't have that pulse and you don't have that understanding of what's going on with your kids. So I think it's you have to be. If you're a coach and you're not in the building with your athletes, you need to find a way. You have to find a way. So.
Lastly, what's your favorite beating Steve Martin moment from high school?
Oh, man, that's tough. Well, as much as they won't admit it, coming from the high school that I came from, I definitely got the upper hand on victories when it comes to facing his wrestlers. So I'll just leave it at that. Just every chance I could get to take and shove their kid into their bench, I took. So, a couple times I wrestled some of their guys, and that was my whole thing was put points on the board and just embarrass them as much as possible. And I tried my best to push them into their bench as much as I could. So that's what I'm going to say.
Jesse Pearce, head coach at Grassfield. We'll talk some more ODU alumni here at the Virginia Duels. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
ODU Monarch Matt Cass continuing here at the Virginia Duels, talking with Great Bridge High School head wrestling coach Matt Small, one of the number of Old Dominion alums coaching here, not just in the Southeastern District, but in the tournament itself. And, every day when you look across that, Matt, it seems like you're seeing a former Monarch teammate.
Oh, yeah. In the Southeastern District especially, we've and fortunate for us, we were having a lot of teammates together. Jesse Pearce at Grassfield, Ben Summerlin at Hickory, a couple assistant coaches, Chris Buckner, Dennis Whippy still helping out. And I think it just shows, one, that what was going on with that team at Old Dominion and just what wrestling did for us and just us looking and wanting to stay part and true to the sport and give back, to the community or just get plugged into a community because some of those guys were from different areas, but it's kind of eerie that we all ended up in one city, you know what I mean? I want to say that it was probably 2012. We were at Robinson High School. It was the state championships. I was at Cox High School at that time, and there was probably 8 of us. Jeff Rusak was my assistant coach at Cox, and there was probably 8 of us that got a photo there with Gray Simons, because Simons was actually, he'd come to my room at Great Neck in my club and roll around, and there was just a large contingency of teammates that were coaching, reffing, just involved in the sport. So, that's kudos to Gray, as being our college coach, and Old Dominion. So, it's pretty cool.
I want to say, it was 2012 because we're all standing there because I drove in from Maryland. I was in for another thing. And so somebody was like, hey, we should go get coach. And turn around, he was already walking down, but waiting. He was coming down. I was like, I got to see these guys.
Yeah. You were there. Yeah, there was all of us. So, and that was a good photo. I got that photo saved. I'm sure all of us that were in that photo have that photo saved and comes up on the Time Hop or Timeline or whatever, the social media stuff these days. But, that's just wrestling. And it's like, wrestling's great, the competitive side of things, the physical side of things, the train and all that, but really, man, it's about the relationships, and that might sound kind of cliche, but really, it's true. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here at the Virginia Duels if it wasn't for the relationships that I had, with my coaching staff, my high school coach, Steve Martin, who's now at ODU. With Jesse Pearce was my assistant coach at Grassfield. Now he's the head coach at Grassfield. Summer and I being teammates and training together and all that. So it really just comes back to like the relationships, just in how important that is and how, wrestling's kind of a byproduct of that,
One thing you see with non-revenue sports that really doesn't get in the newspapers, of course most non-revenue sports don't get in the papers anyway, is what happens after the careers are done. Looking around, like Jesse Pearce is a teacher, Ben's a teacher, you're teaching. You become educators. It's like, okay, yeah, you're coaches too, but you have a direct impact on the lives of kids who, will eventually go to college, hopefully, or eventually choose a career path. And a lot of that comes from the opportunity to have a Division I athletic experience.
Yeah, no doubt. And just being around good people, like Grace Simons, my college coach. Well, see, I was Steve Martin High School, Grace Simons College, and Steve Martin as a mentor, as a coach, and then Wayne Martin as a mentor, as a coach, and Billy Martin Sr. and and Gray, and just having those guys, telling you just how important it is to do the right things, to work hard. And each one, you kind of pull something from each one of those guys as a mentor. And really it's just, how you treat people, and each one I had a unique experience with every one of them, and there's a little bit of them in me, and then as a head coach, you kind of form your own philosophy and you learn this from that guy and this from this guy. But ultimately, this is my brand and how I look at the sport and how I want to form relationships and what I want to preach and what I want to do. But it's all based on your experiences with those guys and just being honored and just lucky to be around those minds, those were some good dudes, some powerful individuals in the wrestling community and just good people,
Look at the impact that Old Dominion University has had. We not just the Southeastern District. Eric Decker's over at Pocosin, my alma mater. You've got, you go back 20 years from we were coming out of high school, 25 years we're coming out of high school as we're doing the math. And how many of our coaches growing up had ties to Old Dominion? I mean, it says something about how that program has really fed the wrestling greatness in this area.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Wayne was an ODU guy. Stephen Wayne's brother was a former coach at ODU. Gray. And then it's like I'll meet guys I don't even know, and they're like, yeah, I wrestled for Gray, here. Or, yeah, I wrestled at Old Dominion. Terry Purdue, one of the legends in the Southeastern District of Western Branch was an ODU guy. So, ODU's got a staple, in this area in terms of college wrestling, and it's done great for us. And then Steve kind of taking it to the next level has been very beneficial to wrestling at the high school level, I think, because it gives us a product to go look at, and some of those guys, I got a high school kid that just signed as a junior, verbally committed to ODU, and that's hard for me as an alumni. Because I'm a monarch. I want them all. I want them all to be a monarch because I'm biased. But I can't interject that into the kids' experience of being recruited. However, I like ODU. So hey, and Colby made his decision, and that was good because now we get to watch. I mean, Jacob Curlin was a Great Bridge guy. One of my guys. He's at ODU doing well, and Billy Curlin was a Great Bridge guy. He graduated from ODU. And, it's just we're lucky to have that in our backyard,
One dynamic when it comes directly to Old Dominion is last round when ODU's out there wrestling Virginia Tech. First match out of the chute, Steve's creeping toward the circle, and he darts his eyes to the right, 3 mats down, where his son is wrestling, and he's your 106-pounder. What is it like coaching your coach's kid now at Great Bridge?
Man, I'm lucky. I mean, who doesn't want, a guy that has that experience that I was able to work, that I was able to wrestle for, that I was able to work under with as a young assistant, and Steve I think's done a great job with his son. Is from the youth league on up, multiple sports, because Max has got to make his own mark, right? And I enjoy it. Because I know that Max is going to get what he needs at home with the support. He knows the sport, but at the same time, I think Steve does a great job of dipping in and out and doing what he needs to do to take care of his team. But he wants to see. I mean, we won a good match the other day. Max won a great match against a guy they lost to 7-5. It was a big 106-pound senior that we lost to earlier in the year. And we avenged that loss yesterday in the quarterfinals, the kid from Tallwood, and just grinded it out. Hard work all over the kid's legs, and then take him down into overtime. And it was really rewarding to look back, to see my high school coach, show that emotion towards his boy, because his boy, you can just see it on his face, because I don't know if you know Steve, but he's not a very emotional guy. So to see him fired up over his little man, doing well is cool. I mean, yeah, I'm all for it, man. It's great. It's great.
Talked to Pearce earlier. I says, which one of your former teammates do you like to beat the most? And he probably, after he thought about it for just like a half a second, he goes, it's always, no matter what, it's always got to be beating Great Bridge. You guys still have that mystique, going back decades. Big shoes to fill. Years ago when Steve left, there was opportunities for different people to have the job, and you settled in a couple years later. Ultimately, in terms of getting your feet wet at Cox and at Grassfield, how did that prepare you for this job at Great Bridge?
Yeah, man. I was an assistant for Great Bridge for a long time, and I'm green and gold, true and true. And there just was a point where, I needed to go out and do my own experiences and become a head coach and learn trial and error, right? Trial and error, figure it out, take what I learned. And then, the Cox job opened up, and, you think about Virginia wrestling, you got, Great Bridge, Cox, Pocosin, Grundy, Christiansburg, and then Colonial Forge later on down the road. But, I would have taken the Great Bridge job had I, it opened up right when I took the Cox job, and all of that. To be able to do what I did for the Cox program was an honor, and, we had a heck of a team. We cracked the top 20, 8 in the country, I think, both years I was there. Won a state title, was a runner-up, but it wasn't although I started at Cox as a wrestler, and finished at Great Bridge, like it just wasn't Great Bridge, and there's something about that school. No matter what happens to that community, attendance zones or whatever, it's just a resilient place, and those walls just do something to people. And it's like, I know Jesse wants to beat me. We coached together, we were teammates together. I want to beat him, and like Great Bridge and Hickory and Grassfield, but it's like, the line, talking a little smack here, but the line, like we had this joke, like I made a shirt and it was like, Great Bridge Wrestling, and I never went public with it, but on the back it said, tradition, and the colors were in Hickory, starts, the colors were in Grassfield colors, and then here it was in Great Bridge colors. So it's kind of, like we're the big brother. We might be the smallest size school, but it's different. They still look over there. We're still the big brother. I mean, but I know those guys are coming for us, and that's great. That's, it's competitive, and we love it. So, I wish them the best, until they're lined up against us, and then, we'll get to work. So,
most of the dynamics that are coaching, Decker over Pekosen's the only guy that really wrestled for Steve. Collegiately, Motley was on kind of on the transition, as was Buckner. But when you look at the program, and you're somebody that always kind of strive to be, to try to improve wherever you could. You were getting extra workouts in and things of that nature. You wanted to be better. You wanted to find yourself find ways to make yourself better. And let's be honest, like, the teams in the later years of the Gray Simons era were, there was probably some motivation issues, there were some injury issues, and we're looking around at it. Yeah, there are comrades and friends and teammates and best men in our wedding and things like that. But comparing what Steve's done for the program the last 15 years, putting All-Americans on the stand, and Ryan Williams in the NCAA finals. I mean, did you think this was possible when Steve first got that job?
Well, I mean, I've known Steve since I was 15 years old, and I worked for him before he got the ODU gig, and I mean, that man is his job, so and he's going to give 100% in all of his affairs. So when he was announced as the head coach there, I knew he was going to hit the ground running, and I mean, there's not a more relentless individual that will work tirelessly to try to do the best that he can do for whatever he is involved in whatever he is involved in. And so, like, it was sad to see him go from Great Bridge. I mean, but, he had to move up. Like, he had to do that. Like, that was his calling, right? Like, he needed to be challenged in ways that he probably couldn't have been challenged anymore at the high school level, right? So why not take on that monster? And he's, and we get to benefit from that. Even though, like, I'm not directly, well, I am directly now with this boy, but I'm still, I'm not directly, influenced, but I still get to watch what he does. And I'll go watch ODU warm up. I still pick his brain on technique, and things like that. And so, I mean, it's a win-win. We get a tough college in our backyard, and we benefit. We reap the rewards of that. So, I mean, kudos to him.
Now here at the Virginia Duels with another Old Dominion alum, Donald Motley, as we are standing mat side as Old Dominion's currently wrestling Tennessee Chattanooga in the fifth place match of the Virginia Duels. We've already talked to Jesse Pearce from Grassfield. We've talked to Matt Spall at Great Bridge. Now the third head coach in the Southeastern District that is an Old Dominion alum, Donald Motley. Main event, you were on the transition years. You were in there early with Gray Simons, and then we're there with the Steve Martin era, one of the few people that actually stuck it out through both coaches and came along, and now you're having a successful campaign at Oscar Smith, and you look back on your career at Old Dominion. How did it set you up for being a good high school coach?
I'm just thankful for having a bunch of blessings in my life. The coaches who I did learn from, a bunch of mental coaching, man. Mental coaching, mental wrestling is what made me who I am. And just being coached tough and learning how to be hard on myself is what made me the coach I am today.
In that transition years, there was a lot of times where coaches come in and they got to get their guys in. And a couple episodes ago, we talked to Josh Tyler, who was one of those guys who was with you, was sitting there. So it's like hard guys to try to you couldn't run you guys off. And what did you learn from that experience, knowing that I've got to prove to this coach that I belong here?
Man, it was great, man. Like, I came from Deep Creek, so Great Bridge was a rival of mine in high school. So I had to adjust my mind on being having to like my coach, you know what I'm saying, because we were rivals in high school. And, you know, in my mind and body, I felt that because I didn't like him and I felt he knew I didn't like him in high school, that I had to do a little extra in order to prove that I belonged on the team. And, you know, it taught me a lot about self-value and believing in yourself, because I knew once he came in, he wanted his guys, in my mind that was. And I said to myself that I done made it this far, and I'm not going to let this change me. I am going to get my college degree. So that's what it was about for me.
When you look around, you see Matt Small across the mat from you. See Jesse Pearce and Chris Buckner across the mat at Grassfield. You see Ben Summerlin across the mat over at Hickory, and then over in Pecos and Eric Decker. He was a little later on in the Martin era, but you see some familiar faces every week in the Southeastern District. That's got to be, is it kind of unsettling and settling at the same time, knowing they know the same thing you do?
It's one of them things where it's like a healthy competition. On the mat, we may seem like we're not friends at all, but off the mat, we're high-fiving, talking to each other about our teams. Well, it's nothing but love, but it's definitely a healthy competition because we all were teammates, so we all do want to prove that, we want to be the best of the teammates, so it's just a natural, healthy competition between us.
You've really helped amp up the program. Sid Savoy was a long-time coach there at Oscar Smith. You've taken over Sheldon Wright, Old Dominion. Trevin Majette, also one of your kids out there. And you've sent kids to your alma mater. And, what was the decision in leading them to Norfolk, or was that a decision they made and you just kind of said, I'm good with that?
It definitely was a decision they made. They always asked me about my career when I wrestled, and by me saying I wrestled at Old Dominion and going to college changed my life, and the coaches I had were blessings. It's just natural because they look for me to lead, and they naturally want to wrestle at the school I wrestled at. But I always tell them the truth. I tell them to be ready. It's a different environment, and you have to pick with your heart, not with just because I'm your coach. But at the end of the day, I did push them a little bit. I'm not going to sit here and act like I talked a lot of good things about Old Dominion and how it helped me. But at the same time, I always wanted to let them know that it was their decision and they had to choose the best spot for them. But I was happy it was Old Dominion.
The demographic of Chesapeake has changed over the years. Where there used to be Great Bridge, now there's Hickory and Grassfield. Neighborhood lines have changed. Middle schools are going different places now. But you still have a degree of a lot of first-generation kids going to college for the first time, and a lot of those kids are at Smith. What do you tell those parents? What do you tell those kids when it comes time, like, hey, if it's not just about wrestling, it's about getting that degree?
Man, you know what, man? I always tell people that, the way my career started is a blessing to be at Oscar Smith. God had a plan for me, and they ended me up at Oscar Smith, and those boys needed me just like I need them. I was a first-generation college guy. I had a couple people in my family go to college but didn't finish. And, the main thing is that they see themselves in me, and they can relate to me. And for that reason, they believe me and they believe in me. And those boys will do anything for me because they know that I'm them, and they know that it's possible. I always tell them that, don't let anybody tell you that you're not this or that, and the difference is they can look at me and see a lot of them in me, and that gives them that belief. And, and that's my goal, to send every kid I can to college, whether it be academic or athletic.
When we get back to the rivalries amongst teammates, I asked Pearce this, I asked Small this. I'm going to ask you this. Who's your favorite former teammate to beat?
It's Pearce. Yeah, I like to beat Pearce because, my freshman year in ODU, he was a senior, and, typical treatment of a freshman with a senior, and, it wasn't not necessarily real bad or anything, but, he definitely let me know in a lot of different ways that I was a freshman and that I had to earn it. And, me being the kind of guy I am with the attitude I had, I was like, I'm here to earn it, and I'm going to earn it now, and it always seemed like no matter what I did, I always look at Pearce, and he still wasn't impressed, so, that's just Jesse, man. He's a great guy, and in my first year, what really got it started was my first year at Oscar Smith. I happened to have a little conversation, and I was just telling him, hey, man, this should come down to us two, man, and districts, man, and conferences. It's looking like it's going to be between us two. And he kind of looked over his shoulder because I was behind him. And he was like, well, you mean us and Kickerton, Grassfield and Kickerton, not Grassfield and Oscar Smith. And that lit a fire under me, and I think that was not the only thing, but it's definitely one of the things that propelled me to be the coach I am. I remember going to practice, and I remember going home that night and was like, okay, we're going to see who dealt who, and my first year at Oscar Smith, we won a conference championship by half a point. And it came down to our 220 final conference final match, and he needed to get a pin, and he did it. And, and from there on out, just seeing the look on his face, You know, I mean, seeing his hands on his knees, head bent down, because he was rooting for the other guy too, even though it wasn't grass field. You know, and then right afterwards we shook hands and we were back cool. You know, but like I said, they lit a fire under me, and I believe those are the kind of things that the fires need to be lit under everybody. You know what I'm saying? And they're not going to necessarily like it, but if you're that kind of guy, it's going to make you want to improve yourself behind the scenes, and that's what it did for me.
And you live a couple houses down from Summerlin, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we were right around the block from each other.
And what's that relationship been like? Because he's not originally from this area. You know, Jesse wrestled Lake Taylor, Small wrestled Great Bridge. You're from Deep Creek. You know, Ben's from the other side of state in Brookville. So, you know, he's kind of came in when they dropped the program at Longwood. He was kind of there with us. But, you know, what's that relationship like, you know, living so close to Ben?
Man, it's great, man. First of all, me and Ben are best friends, man. We argue like brothers, but we come together like brothers, too. You know, Ben gave me my chance when I was fresh out of college, and I was kind of volunteering at Deep Creek and then coached there for a season. But when I left Deep Creek, Ben called me the next day and told me to come on staff. And him and Dennis Whitby, who also was my wrestling partner in college, that was the beginning of a great friendship between us. I mean, we were cool in college, but once we both became adults and were living on our own, that's when we kind of grew together. And you know, we talk about wrestling a lot, but not only that, we talk about just our lives and our future. And, you know, Ben is the guy that I dislike beating the most because he's like a loved one for me, you know what I'm saying? So whenever we do beat him, and they've beaten us a lot in my career too, you know, and I can say he feels the same way. It's like one of those healthy things for us both. You know, it makes us both go back into the drawing board when we beat each other. And once again, it's a healthy competition, but at the end of the day, Ben's one of my best friends out of those alumni of ODU wrestlers.
Main event Motley from Oscar Smith. We've heard from Pearce. We've heard from Small, now from Motley. Summerlin doesn't have a voice, so he couldn't talk. Thanks for the time, man.
All right, thank you, man. Appreciate the time.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.